Welcome to this episode of our Patent Behavior Bytes summer series dedicated to families, educators, community members, and students preparing for the return of school in the fall of 2020. Please note, no one at the time of this recording knows what the fall opening will look like, but we have invited folks with various backgrounds and experiences to share best practices and resources.
So what exactly is trauma-informed care? I know that this is also a term that is used a lot, but do we really know exactly what that means? I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding around this term. So just to clarify a little bit, trauma-informed care really is focusing on shifting our view of what is wrong with you or what is wrong with that student to what has happened to you or what's happened to that student. What has that student experienced? So there may be a student or a child or youth that you're seeing all of those signs and symptoms, that maybe they're being more disruptive than usual. Maybe they're not able to focus. Maybe they have more headaches or stomach aches than usual. Instead of just looking at them saying like, what's wrong with them? Trauma-informed care is really trying to shift it to what happened to them. Why are they maybe responding that way? What's making them say or feel or do those things? And a lot of times it's because of what they've learned and how they've learned how to cope with some of what they're going through.
So we need to change our language with our youth or with anybody that's experienced extreme trauma, rather than because of their behavior being out of the norm and blaming them, like, what is wrong with you? Maybe it's having a conversation of, tell me more, what's going on, help me understand.
Yes, help me understand what you're going through right now and maybe why you're responding the way that you are. And really, like you said, shifting it from looking at maybe the negative behaviors that they're displaying and putting that inward and really kind of talking that through and saying, maybe this child's acting a certain way because of what they're going through at home or what they're going through in the community or some kind of stressors that are happening to them right now that they feel like this is the best way to cope. This is the only way that they know how to cope.
And by saying things like, what's wrong with you, or something negative, that's just going to make the youth become more either outwardly difficult or may internalize and probably lose rapport and trust in that adult.
Absolutely. So this is just a little bit more, I don't know, it's just meeting them where they are and trying to
get off the child himself or herself, and it's looking at what the experiences are versus there's something wrong with you.
Exactly. Yes. So again, when we're talking about trauma-informed care, this is really, we have to think in terms of this continuum, especially when organizations or agencies are trying to become more trauma-informed or they're working their way towards that. So I'm not going to talk too much about this slide because there's a lot of information on this, but I just really want to focus on this continuum of trauma, becoming trauma-informed. Just because you attend, one training doesn't necessarily mean that you're trauma-informed. It's really a process. And so I think organizations and agencies are working towards this, and the more information that's out there, the more trainings that are available. I think that this is really catching on, and like I said, just there's more and more agencies now than ever that are moving towards being trauma-informed. But it is a process. So the first step is being trauma aware. So just becoming aware of how trauma, how prevalent it is, the effects of trauma, and really how that might impact the people that we're working with, our coworkers, the clients that we're serving, the students that we're serving, just understanding how it impacts everyone. And then going to being trauma sensitive, so exploring the principles of trauma-informed care, and really preparing to change our entire focus of an agency or an organization. Then becoming trauma responsive, So rethinking the routines and the infrastructure of the organizations, really going a little bit deeper, and then ultimately becoming trauma informed. So again, I just think that this is important to recognize that becoming trauma informed is a process. It's not something that can happen overnight. And that, you know, I'm hopeful, and my vision is really that we all become trauma informed, but we're really starting at this trauma aware piece. And I think that that's really what we are trying to focus on, again, as a coalition, is just getting the information out there. If we all can be trauma aware, that's just a really wonderful first step. And then getting back to, you know, sometimes this information is pretty heavy and it can be a little bit somewhat negative when you hear a lot of the statistics that really came out of that ACEs study and the research since that original study. But ACEs and trauma are not our destiny. Our brains can be hurt, but they can also be healed. We can be resilient. And we know that children are very resilient and they can bounce back from adversity as long as they have the family and community supports they need. So resilience research really highlights the importance of having that one loving, nurturing, safe, stable person in their lives in order to help them through some of the traumas that they may be experiencing. I always think back to Oprah. Everyone knows, you know, a lot of her traumas that she had experienced in her childhood. She definitely had gone through a lot. But I remember on one interview, she had mentioned that a teacher, she had a teacher that she was able to count on and to go to, and that teacher had changed the trajectory of her life. And I think that it's really important to know that any one of us can be that person for someone. So just being mindful of that and really trying to form the connections with our students, with youth, with children, because we may be their one person that they feel most comfortable to go to and the one person that they feel safe with. So just keeping that in mind, but some strategies to help with our youth at home. You know, what we're going through right now with the COVID pandemic, it is stressful, and it is, I think some of our students and some of our children are thriving in this right now. They are loving being at home. Maybe they're a little bit more isolated usually, and they just are, you know, they're enjoying this time away from school and from people. And I think there's a lot of kids out there that are thriving in this, but there's a lot of kids who aren't. They're not doing so well. So what can help them really build that resilience while we're at home? These are just some strategies that we've listed here. We believe that caregiver reactions are key. So we know that kids look to us as caregivers and our responses in order to kind of figure out how they should respond. So if we're remaining calm and collected, I think kids will model that from you. We know that routines and schedules are extremely important, and they really are a source of stability for children. So making sure that we're keeping those regular routines and the schedules going for our kids will really help them during this time. Helping kids recognize the greater good in isolation and social distancing. So really talking through this, you know, having them understand that we're helping everyone by being a little bit more isolated and social distancing with people and wearing our face masks out, you know, while we're around people. We are protecting others and we're staying healthy ourselves. So just remembering to really put that positive spin on it, and just continue to let them know that we're helping everyone by doing what we need to do in this quarantine, isolation, social distancing time. Being honest and just willing to listen non-judgmentally to our children. They have big feelings, and I know specifically I have a 5-year-old here at home, and he struggled a lot with getting out of his regular routine, not going to school, not being socialized with other children. You know, he's an only child, so it was really tough for him at first. And just listening to them and their feelings around this, and just validating their feelings can do such a world of good. Just listening to them and knowing that you're, you know, having them know that you're here to listen and that you're not going to judge them, and that you probably feel the same way too. That can be just such a huge help.
So a way to address that would be saying to your child, whatever age, it's, I hear what you're saying. I hear that you are sad or you're frustrated, rather than saying you should not feel that way.
Right. Validating those feelings and saying, I understand that this is how you feel, and I hear that this is how you feel. And maybe mommy or daddy or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle, we feel that way too. And that's okay. It's okay. That we're just going to get through this together.
Right.
Loosening rules in social media and encouraging connection with friends virtually. So this one may be a little tough for some of us. I know it's been tough on me, really just loosening those rules on screen time and that sort of thing. But understanding that right now, given this pandemic and the social isolation, like the physical social isolation, that's tough for kids, especially when they have been, they're used to being social with other people. So really just encouraging the connection on social media or different platforms while monitoring their usage, I think is a good thing for them as well, because they do need to continue to find ways to be social. Some continued strategies, encouraging healthy habits. So again, it's easy to just kind of stay inside and to maybe not get out as much, being socially isolated like we are and practicing social distancing. However, we really need to encourage healthy habits with our kids and ourselves. So practicing good sleep hygiene, practicing great nutrition, so eating healthy meals, exercising. These things are really going to help us in the long run. And so really trying to get our kids out there, to be feeding them well, to be making sure that they're having plenty of sleep. It's going to be extremely important for them. Help them practice mindfulness. So I think a lot of people, when they think about mindfulness, are a little bit intimidated at first. You may think that it's something that you have to spend a lot of time on and focus and attention on. However, there are very simple ways that we can practice mindfulness in our everyday lives. And it doesn't necessarily have to take too long. So for example, just taking some deep breaths and modeling that for our kids and the children that we have around us. There's plenty of apps out there now that we could try to promote to our kids, and really just kind of practicing these mindfulness exercises with them can really help them with centering a lot of their emotions and their stresses, and really just kind of refocus.
And perhaps with that mindfulness piece, it's pointing out to the child how their body's feeling. Maybe the caregiver says, you seem frustrated. How's your body feeling right now? And kind of work through that as well. Are you feeling hot? Are you feeling tense in your hands or your neck or your jaw? And then,
right.
Letting them process that my body's telling me something's not right here. And therefore, then working through those, taking 4 or 5 deep breaths and doing that with the child.
Yes.
And trying to release that to them so that when they realize during their day, and this can be at any age of a child,
yep,
we as adults need to be doing it. Oh, my body's saying something. I got to take 1 minute to just stop, focus on what my body's saying, and take some deep breaths and decompress. And by practicing that with your youth, that becomes a life skill.
Exactly. It's just that it's so useful. And like you said, at really any age, I know I'm talking through it with my 5-year-old right now, and just really it's helping to identify feelings.
Right.
When we feel sad, this is how we feel. This is how our body reacts. This is how our body responds. This is, just really identifying what we're going through. It's tremendously helpful.
And then learning effective, healthy ways
to cope,
to deal with that.
Yeah. Another strategy could be limiting media exposure. So that can actually, that can be a cause of stress to a lot of children and youth. So just being mindful of what we have on the TV. I know right now, given not only COVID and the pandemic, but also some of the racial injustices, the riots, the violence that, we've seen on TV, it can be stressful for kids. And so just making sure that we're being mindful and aware of what we have, what they're being exposed to, is just really important, because it can do some damage on some kids. And now more than ever, just really focusing on the importance of self-care, helping our youth and children just understand how to take care of ourselves mentally, physically, and emotionally, what that looks like, how they can feel good, and really, again, just putting it in their terms and just making sure that we're taking the time out to make sure that they're taking care of themselves as well as ourselves.
Right.
We need to take care of ourselves as adults, but our kids do too. Like I said, they're going through a lot of changes right now, a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, and we need to acknowledge that, and we need to make sure that during this time they are taking care of themselves. And so, maybe that means reading a book in their room, alone, quiet time, going outside, going for a walk, whatever they need to feel good. Really just trying to focus in on that and making sure that they are aware of those things that also make them feel good as well. And then seeking mental health services if needed, such as like a school counselor, a social worker, pediatrician. I know intermediate units are a really wonderful resource, but I think there's a lot of mental health services that are out there right now. They are being very creative in the ways that they are providing those mental health services, as far as virtually, telehealth, that sort of thing. There's a lot out there. We have warm lines where people can call just to talk to someone. There's a lot out there right now. And so I think that we need to really tap into those resources if we feel like we need to do that for our children and for ourselves.
And if people are uncertain where to begin, they could go to either their county government and or their intermediate unit.
Yes, that's where I would probably start to refer some folks to, is the county government services, the intermediate units. Those would be some really great starting points. And then I think right now we are all kind of at the edge of our seats wondering what exactly it's going to look like when these kids return back to school in a month or so. I know of some schools that are coming out with information right now as we speak, as far as how they're going to be preparing for the return to school, what exactly that's going to look like, whether that's going to be solely virtual school, or is it going to be a mixture of virtual and in person, or is it just going to be in person? If it is in person, do they need to wear face masks and do the PPE stuff and be socially distant? I mean, there's tons of questions surrounding this right now, and that can be a big stress for a lot of us, I think. So really, how can we best prepare our youth to re-enter school regardless of how that will look? Because really right now we're not 100% sure. So just to mention a few things, just acknowledging their feelings and concerns by listening non-judgmentally, validating their feelings. Again, I just can't stress this enough that we're stressed, they're stressed. They have feelings about this. They may be anxious. They may not want to go back to school. They may be really concerned about it. Just listen to them. Acknowledge it. Acknowledge that this is a stressful time, but we're going to get through it together. Encourage them to ask questions if they have any. I think this is really important to do, because I think there's kids have questions. They probably have a lot of questions, and I think that because we don't necessarily know the answers, sometimes it's easy to just kind of say, we'll talk about it later, or I don't really know right now, we'll figure it out, or just to kind of dismiss some of those questions. because again, we're not sure of the answers. But I think kids need to really know that they're heard, and that their questions are being considered. And I think we just need to be honest with them if we aren't sure of what that answer may be. You know, if we aren't sure what it's going to look like, it's okay to say we're not sure.
Yeah.
But really allowing them to ask the questions that they need to ask in order for them to just feel comfortable is going to be extremely important.
And that will keep the lines of communication open with the youth and the caregiver, so that continue that trust and rapport.
Right. They will feel much more comfortable with coming to you and asking questions later on down the road when, you know, some of this information does come out. It's a great point. And then again, just reassuring them that no matter the outcome, they will be okay. You will be okay. You're going to help them get through this together, that we'll figure it out. And then also speaking to them in familiar terms, depending on their age and development. So, you know, my 5-year-old may not understand what PPEs are and socially distancing and, you know, the symptoms of the virus and how, you know, to contaminate. I don't know. He's not going to understand some of those terms that we all may use, but really just talking to them on their level, their cognitive level, and just understanding that, you know, we need to make sure that we're communicating with them the best that we can. And sometimes that just means using some different terms and different language to be able to communicate that. It's just really, really important to put it in terms that they'll understand so they get the whole picture.
And being patient.
Yes. Absolutely. So what other resources are out there for additional information? I've referred to our website a few different times during the presentation, and so I'm going to refer to it again. ccacescoalition.com, that's the Chester County ACEs Coalition website. We have on there a bunch of different resources, articles, information. We have a self-care tool for adults during the pandemic. We have a COVID-19 resources page. We have questions that you can ask an agency or an organization to inquire on whether or not they are truly trauma informed. We have strategies on how to prevent ACEs on our website. So again, just anyone can visit that website. I encourage you to do that. Another really wonderful resource is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris's TED Talk. It's only about 15 minutes. It's not that long, but I encourage everyone to watch this YouTube video. She's amazing. She's actually a pediatrician that's out of San Francisco. She developed the Center for Youth Wellness out there, and she is now the first Surgeon General of California. And so she's doing a ton of work on childhood adversity, how that affects our health. And she's wonderful. This video just really summarizes the study very well and what to do moving forward in order to address childhood trauma. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network, that is very specific, obviously, to children. It is a wonderful resource. There's tons of tools on that website. I encourage you to look at that. ACEs Too High is a really great website. That's where you can find the ACEs screening tool. You can also find a resilience screening, which I think is, if you were to administer the ACEs survey, I like to pair the two together just because it really highlights the supports that you have in your life and where you could potentially build some resilience in some different areas. So I really love that website. The CDC has some great information on the ACEs studies, some graphics if you need them, some guides. And then the Center for Youth Wellness, again, is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris's center that she had developed. And again, they're just doing a ton of work in the California area, but also nationally to really promote ACEs screenings at every child's well checkup. So really talking to our children about trauma with a medical professional, which is really great. So they're doing a lot of work around that. So that's the end of the presentation. I just want to thank you all. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me. We have our email addresses listed here. I'll answer any questions that you have. And please visit our website for additional information as well.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's been great having you speak to us today.
Thank
Just some
you.
of the key points that you made, giving us the information about the ACEs study and how that can have such an impact on our long-term well-being as we grow from little guys into adulthood, and can help us give some insights, realizing that it's whatever traumas we've experienced, there are ways to get help and to move forward and have a happy life by accessing any supports, whether it's other family members, friends, agencies that are out in our communities and our counties, wherever we may be. And also taking a look at some of those, being aware how much our body and our mind influence how we react to everything, and taking time to pay attention to those body sensations, what our mind's saying, like with the bear that you had pointed out. If a bear's coming at you, yes, your life's in danger. Sometimes, though, in our society, we're not going to typically run into a bear like that, but we are going to run into situations that cause a very, very similar reaction. And it's taking a moment to stop and think, how am I going to respond versus react?
Exactly.
And just noticing what the body's telling us, and is what's going through our head really accurate? Is that an accurate perception of what I'm encountering? And can I stop for a minute and think this through to do something that I'm not going to regret, and help our youth in implementing those strategies to just stop and either get help or some kind of self-regulation strategies. And the resources you gave us are wonderful. Even if a person who's watching is not in Chester County, they can certainly be looking at the Chester County website for pointers. Going to any of those can get people the information that they need. They can also contact us, as our contact information's there. And again, I want to thank you, Chelsea, for your expertise in helping us get families and caregivers ready for the new school year and even beyond. I also wish to thank everybody who's watching today, and hope this was helpful, and maybe you learned some new things. Maybe it was just a refresher with some of the information that we presented, but we can always use a refresher. We need to take care of ourselves in order to take care of our youth. It's just like that, being on the airplane, if the plane's going to go down, you put on your oxygen mask first. Before you can help somebody else. It's the exact same thing with our kids. We have to take care of ourselves, model the best we can, knowing we're human beings, and then be able to effectively support our youth as we work through this situation we're in. But it's not going to be the only situation that we live in as we grow throughout our livelihoods. There's always going to be some stressors and how we react to them. So even though this is an extremely unprecedented time, it also, I'm hoping, a way to help us to help our youth in learning coping strategies now for anything they may encounter future. So if anybody has any questions, again, feel free to contact Chelsea or myself. And we thank you for participating today, and take good care.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
This concludes another Patent Behavior Bite. Remember, this is just a bite of behavior. We'll see you next time.